It was a cool Wednesday morning when Big Shaq decided to visit one of his stores without telling anyone. He wasn't the kind of owner who just sat in a fancy office all day. He believed in knowing his employees, seeing how things were run, and making sure his values were in every part of his business. Wearing a simple hoodie and jeans, Big Shaq walked into the store he had built from nothing. The place was always known for its bright, welcoming vibe and great customer service. And today was no different. It was full of activity. He smiled as he looked around, feeling proud of everything he had achieved. But as he walked toward the customer service counter, something didn't feel right. A tall, middle-aged man in a suit, George, the store's manager, was staring at him. George's face was full of irritation, as if Big Shaq's presence alone was a problem. "Excuse me," George said, stepping in front of Big Shaq. "Can I help you with something?" Big Shaq smiled politely. "No, I'm just looking around." George narrowed his eyes. "Well, you don't look like someone who shops here. We have cameras, and we don't allow loitering." Big Shaq's smile faded slightly. "I'm not loitering. I'm just here to—" George cut him off, raising his voice so others could hear. "We don't allow troublemakers here. Either buy something or leave." Customers and employees started glancing over. What would you do if you were in Big Shaq's shoes? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Big Shaq felt his face heat up with embarrassment, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm not causing any trouble. I have every right to be here." George crossed his arms and smirked. "Not if I say you don't. Now this is your last chance. Leave, or I'll call security." Big Shaq's heart sank. He had built this store from the ground up, working day and night to make it a success. And now he was being treated like a criminal in his own business. But instead of arguing, Big Shaq just nodded and walked out, his mind racing. This wasn't over. He had to remind everyone exactly who he was, and make sure no one else ever felt this kind of humiliation in his stores again. Sitting in his car, Big Shaq gripped the steering wheel tightly. His heart wasn't pounding from anger, but from deep disappointment. He had worked so hard to build a business that welcomed everyone. Yet here he was, treated like he didn't belong just because of the color of his skin. He thought about the long nights he had spent building this company. When he first started, no one believed he would make it. But he never gave up. He learned everything: how to manage inventory, train employees, and give customers the best experience possible. But now he realized something. It wasn't enough to just build the business. He had to make sure the people running it shared his values. Clearly, George didn't. Big Shaq took a deep breath and picked up his phone. He called his assistant, Amelia, someone who had been with him from the very beginning. "Amelia, can you meet me at the downtown store in 7 minutes?" he asked. "Of course," Amelia replied. She could tell something was wrong. "Is everything okay?" "Not really," Big Shaq said quietly. "I just need to take care of something." After hanging up, he sat there for a moment, gathering his thoughts. He wasn't going to storm in angrily or make a scene. That wasn't his way. But he was going to make it very clear who he was and what he stood for. 7 minutes later, Big Shaq walked back into the store, this time with Amelia by his side. Amelia, sharp and confident, carried a leather folder filled with official documents, proof that Big Shaq was the owner. This time, he walked in with purpose. The humiliation from earlier was gone, replaced by calm determination. He spotted George chatting with some employees near the customer service counter. His arrogant attitude hadn't changed. As Big Shaq and Amelia approached, George saw them and frowned. Big Shaq stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. "You heard her. I'm Big Shaq, the founder and owner of this store, and every other one in this chain." The employees nearby froze, their eyes darting between Big Shaq and George. A hush fell over the store. Customers, sensing the tension, stopped to watch. George let out a nervous laugh. "This must be some kind of joke. There's no way—" Before he could finish, Amelia opened the folder and pulled out a document. "Here's proof of ownership," she said firmly. "Big Shaq built this company from the ground up. And now, because of your behavior, we're about to have a very different conversation." George's smirk vanished, replaced by panic. "Mr. Shaq, I didn't realize. I thought—" "You thought what?" Big Shaq asked, his voice rising slightly. "That I didn't belong here because of the way I look? That you could treat me or anyone else however you wanted?" George stammered, but Big Shaq didn't give him a chance to respond. "Let me tell you something," Big Shaq continued. "I built this company to be a place where everyone feels welcome, no matter who they are, where they're from, or what they look like. And what you did today goes against everything I stand for." George opened his mouth to speak, but Big Shaq held up a hand to stop him. "You've embarrassed me, humiliated yourself, and damaged this store's reputation. As of this moment, you are no longer the manager here. Amelia will handle your termination paperwork." The employees gasped. George's face turned red. "Mr. Shaq, please, It's done," Big Shaq said firmly. "You can leave now." As George slinked out of the store, Big Shaq turned to the employees who had been watching in silence. Some looked shocked, while others seemed relieved. "I want to apologize to all of you," Big Shaq said, "for letting someone like him lead this store. I should have done better in making sure my values were reflected here." One of the younger employees, a cashier named Aaron, stepped forward. "Mr. Shaq, we didn't know he was like that," she said. "He was always so strict, but we didn't realize he could be so cruel." Big Shaq nodded. "It's not your fault, but from now on, things are going to change. I'll be visiting more often, and I want all of you to know. You can come to me if something doesn't feel right. This store belongs to all of us." The employees clapped, some even cheering. Big Shaq smiled, feeling a mix of pride and relief. Before leaving, he spent the rest of the day at the store, greeting customers, chatting with employees, and even helping stock shelves. Word spread quickly about what had happened, and customers approached Big Shaq to thank him for standing up against injustice. An older woman, probably in her late 60s, who had witnessed the whole thing, placed a gentle hand on Big Shaq's shoulder. "You set an example today," she said with a warm smile. "It's good to see someone in your position care so much." As Big Shaq left the store that evening, he looked back with a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just a business to him. It was a reflection of his heart and his values, and he would do everything in his power to make sure it stayed that way. If you like this story, share it with family and friends. Also, subscribe to the channel for more stories.